Okay, so welcome to this week's episode of the podcast Foresting Tomorrow. Episode number. Come on. It's a game.
It's 8.
It's 8. Yes. Yeah, we're getting close to 10.
Yeah.
So
Milestone
number 10. I don't know if you can say that,
but at least a milestone.
Yeah. Yeah, and for those watching the podcast, you could see that we have headphones on.
Yeah,
and it takes some
getting used to.
Yeah, it's I'm not a fan.
No, it's a weird kind of feeling.
It's quite intense.
Yeah, it's very intimate. Like you're almost inside my head.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Let's start. First of all, you look more fresh today
than yesterday.
Yeah,
hopefully.
You were out for some weekend adventures.
Yeah. I had a bachelor party in the weekend.
It was like an urban adventure, not forest adventure.
No. That was we were a bit in a forest, but
you were?
Yeah, with the laser game stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
But that was on Amager.
Yeah.
So yeah,
good in Copenhagen.
But mostly in the concrete jungle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and by the way, I have a loose end from last week.
Cool.
There's some phenotyping. Why are you laughing?
It's because it was funny the last time.
We need to talk about how we sort of help each other out.
Yeah.
When I start saying phenotyping and I have no idea what that means, you need to Google it.
Yeah.
Let me Google it while I try to explain what it is.
I need to catch that ball and...
Exactly. You can't leave me hanging drying like that. Okay, but I know what phenotyping is now, and so I won't fuck this up this time, so I'll read it out loud. Phenotyping.
Cool. I'm looking forward to you educating me.
Yeah, it's actually quite simple, to be honest.
Okay. It sounded simple.
Yeah. So phenotyping is the process of observing and measuring visible traits.
Okay.
So understand
visible traits.
So understand how they look and behave. So like plants, observing plants.
Okay.
So this could include if let's say we talk about forest, it could include things like height, leaf size, wood density, growth rate.
Okay.
So resistance to disease, visible traits, phenotypes.
Visible traits. Okay.
Yeah,
so you have to be able to see them to it being a phenotype.
Yeah. And then you have genotypes.
Do
you have any idea what that is?
I guess it's something to do with the genes.
Yeah.
So
yes, exactly.
You can't see those, but you can measure those with something.
Yeah. So those two, more or less, sounds like the same, but it's definitely not the same.
Yeah. I can see.
So phenotypes, I think that's more our game.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also kind of your first take of measuring something, I guess.
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Exactly.
I can't remember how much of, we have the different senses like smell, sight, so on, hearing. But it's like most of our capabilities come from our ability to see.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very important one.
Exactly. Good. So with that out of the way, we, you, I, and everyone listening know what genotyping is.
Phenotype.
Huh?
Phenotype.
Also genotyping.
Yeah, you also know that now. But
So let's move on. So I think this episode will be quite nature and environmental friendly.
Yeah.
More or less. So if I begin, I stumbled upon a news from innovatech.co.nz, which is
one of our favorite go-tos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a very nice page with a lot of, let's say, technology concerning forestry.
Yeah.
It's a New Zealand and Australian-based site, I think, organization.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's a news that had the title "A Systematic Systematic. A systemic change in land use.
Yeah.
Yes. So, in a new paper, Investing in a Nature-Positive Future, the paper, New Forest, a global investment manager of nature-based real assets and natural capital strategies, has seen increasing numbers of investors making commitments to align their investment portfolios with both the net zero aspiration of the Paris Agreement and the concept of nature positive flowing from the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Agreement.
Okay.
Yes. So, the concept of nature positive.
Yeah, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, I'll explain what it is.
Yeah, please.
Refers to the conservation, restoration, and enhancement of nature, reversing its decline by 2030.
Yeah.
And achieving full and ongoing recovery of nature by 2050.
Okay, wait, what does it mean to have full recovery of nature? Because I guess humans at least...
Then you need to have some kind of baseline.
Yeah, how do we measure that? Because we have affected, I guess, nature for all our
that's
existence.
I think where science comes in.
Okay.
But we'll actually have more on that later in this podcast.
Yeah.
So, but the key takeaways is that they see a growing interest in portfolios that meet climate and biodiversity, and reversing, of course, nature decline. And then they also talk about the role of asset managers.
Yeah.
That they become quite important in terms of making sure that we manage various assets according to some of these guidelines.
Yeah.
And then they also talk about natural capital asset class. So with agriculture, forestry, and conservation assets, this combined, that's a sector that's around, or estimated to be around $300 billion. And this could increase to $1 trillion in 20 years.
Okay.
And then they talk about that we need to have supportive policies, standardized carbon and biodiversity metrics, and market-based conservation solutions in order to make this work. That makes sense. So all in all, of course, they talk about this future where it's good business to take care of our planet.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah. I actually read something on LinkedIn. There's like, in Denmark, I think that's probably how it is in a lot of places. In Denmark, there's like the biologist that, of course, cares deeply about nature and biodiversity and so on. And at least I've seen this a couple of times where, sometimes I think it's hard for people to explain why it is that we need to take care of nature and biodiversity. Yeah. Sometimes it's about ecosystem collapsing. But there's also a lot of biologists that argue that, but ecosystem, they can easily collapse. The planet Earth will survive.
Yeah, probably just create new ones.
Exactly. So, the big loser if that happens is, of course, us. But we could also adopt and change, move, and all that kind of stuff. But what I read yesterday was that even though that's the case, there isn't actually any sort of evidence that's sort of,
supports that it's a problem. Or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And maybe it's just, ethics and moral that needs to drive that movement.
Yeah, it's hard if you don't feel like you're getting, affected by it.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, why climate has had some, I don't know if success is the correct word but gained some momentum, is that people were beginning to feel it. Also just here in Denmark with the extra rain and stuff like that.
That's easy to feel.
Yeah, and that's how we typically act.
You also felt it in Italy.
Yeah, exactly.
Last summer.
Yeah, with the hails.
With your new car being smashed.
Yeah, completely destroyed. And a lot of cars, 10,000s of cars, with these huge hails, like some the size almost of oranges, but like golf balls.
Yeah.
So yeah, we felt it there, but it just rained all night, every night in Italy when we were there. This year there wasn't anything, so it's also hard.
Yeah, you're right. But of course, I mean, for businesses, if it makes economic sense, that will of course drive some change.
That's markets have always been a great thing for changing stuff. If you can see that we can gain some capital, people will begin to act. So I'm it sounds really great. I'm looking forward to see how you implement the markets for these nature conservation things.
Yeah.
The destruction of nature, making plantations or farming instead of forests have been easy because it's economical. You can it's tangible to understand why it was done.
Exactly.
Also to create food, of course.
Yeah.
The other way around, it's harder to see from an economical point of view, at least.
Yeah, it is.
So
But a lot of interesting things are happening, and I'm by no means no expert.
No, none of us are in either biology or, I guess, conservation or anything. But at least we know how markets work. So and also I like the idea of making more nature conservation and trying to get more back on track and have nature be a larger part of our lives.
But you're also a parent like I am. I mean,
yeah, you're right. It probably affects us.
Yeah, that affects us a lot.
Yeah. So yeah. Let's see.
Let's
see
pray
how it
for a
goes.
better, healthier future for kids at least.
Yeah. And this is still the only planet that we know we can actually live on. So let's try to do the best we can with it.
Yeah. Good.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. I also have a small thing. It's not that small. At least not if you come from academia.
It's a huge thing.
It's huge. But the interesting part, probably in this context of the podcast, is that it feels like it's more technical. It feels more like it's on our turf, and it's the Nobel Prizes for this year, both in physics and in chemistry, were actually given for broader, in neural networks or machine learning.
Okay.
So in physics, it was given to John Hopfield and Geoffrey Hinton, which both come from physics, but they studied the neurons and neural science, and it's a bit of a change because I looked back in the earlier given, and it's much more what I will believe classical physics, like it could be the black holes or something like that. But now it's much more on this computational or machine learning AI thing, which is kind of funny to see because essentially it's probably more math than it's physics. And famously, there's no Nobel Prize for math. Do you know why?
No.
Okay, This is not a fact, but it's the rumor about why it is.
Okay.
The rumor is because it's a bit funny. You give it for the classical ones like physics and chemistry and medicine, and also economics.
Yeah.
But not for math, which is kind of the fundamental
of
thing
these.
of all these things.
Yeah.
So the story is that Nobel's wife had an affair with a mathematician, so that's why it's not given. Yeah,
I'll buy this.
Yeah. So, but in math, you have your own. It's called the Fields Medal.
Is it just like prestigious?
Yeah, in math, because that's the highest thing you can get in math.
Yeah.
It's not. So Nobel is more known, probably also because of how it's given. It's also given, to peace, Nobel Peace Prize. So it kind of hits broader, but it's the most known, recommendation you can get in science. So it's a lot of people aspire for it. Very few will get it.
Yeah.
But a lot of this work and why it's interesting in this case is again it's this AI and machine learning, and these neural networks are kind of the fundamental thing of it, which are used in these, we talked about them earlier, large language models, and that's layers of neural networks. And that's when you put layers together, that's when it's becoming deep. You know, this deep learning had a lot of traction back then.
Yeah.
And in chemistry, I don't know, typically you're also given the Nobel Prize for something that has, done earlier in your career. It's not like you do it in 2023 and then you get the Nobel Prize in 24.
Yeah.
But in chemistry, you maybe you can remember this name, Demis Hassabis, from he's very well known within AI machine learning, and it comes back from this AlphaGo game.
No.
Okay, so AlphaGo is like very advanced chess. I have no idea how to play it, but it's very big in Korea. And it's known for one of the hardest games, and the ones that are very good at that. So a computer could never beat it. Computers could have been able to beat persons at chess for years now because it's a finite game.
Yeah.
So it may not be able to always beat, but you can always end up in a neutral state where no one wins.
Yeah.
So, but this AlphaGo is much harder. So they created this, and it was actually there's a documentary. I think it's on Netflix about it. It's very interesting. People should see it.
Okay.
So what they are doing, this company where Demis, he's a researcher, computational neuroscientist, but he also is an entrepreneur and have created companies. He also worked at Google DeepMind.
Is it a movie?
Yeah, it might be a movie, not a series. Yeah, I think it's a movie. Yeah.
From 17.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's about how they make this AI that can beat one of the best AlphaGo players in the world.
Okay.
Which has never been able. No computer have ever been able to beat a human at it. And they did that. And you play like 5 series, but the human actually won one of them. So,
okay.
But so that got very known for that. And the idea was not that they should build an AI for, winning AlphaGo. The idea was to use that game, it's called Go, the game, I think.
Yeah.
To develop the AI. And what that has...
game, Go.
Yeah, and what that had resulted in is something called AlphaFold now, which is what they received the Nobel Prize for.
Okay.
And what that does, AlphaFold, it's an artificial intelligence that predicts the structure of proteins. I don't know why that's very important, but it's essentially very very important. So and they solved a problem that hasn't been solvable forever, and they did that with AI, and that's why they won this Nobel Prize. But it's a kind of a shift in how you would give this typically, because this is it's not like what in 2020 they did it. So it's only 4 years after he did it, he gets the Nobel Prize. Typically, it's many years before you get something for it.
Okay.
So, but what that did, that put artificial intelligence not only as something we use, to make look at the pictures and do something with that, but also solve extremely hard problems.
Yeah.
So it says something about how we are shifting also in technology, that it's used everywhere, and it's going to be something we will run into over and over and over again. And this just tells you that even the Nobel Prize is now given for something like that, which is not classical physics or chemistry, but computer science.
Yeah.
So that's a bit. I think it's interesting because this is going to affect also in the forestry sector. For a lot of stuff, it's already been used for something like looking at satellite photos and deciding or finding out what is happening in this area and so on. So it's entering everywhere, and now it's also in the Nobel Prize.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and yeah.
So it's back from. So it's six. So it was developed in 16, I think.
Yeah, for the Go game, and essentially this created the basis of what they have been used for this AlphaFold. So to put it in terms, what is it good at? So Go is a game why it's hard is because you have a multiple of choices, And every time you take a choice, the next tree of choices also evolves.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so hard. But what they did was they created a system that could look like 50 steps into the future of a game. If your opponent does this, what can I do the next, and then it just propagates these 50 steps into the future, and no human can keep on doing that. No. And the computer just gets more and more powerful.
Yeah.
So now probably you won't be able to beat the Go.
Exactly, because a lot of things have happened since 16.
Yeah, exactly. Man.
It was really early days.
Yeah, it was. And it's in the movie of it, you can also see how it's like a server. They have all the servers with them, and they sit there, and it's fun to see.
Okay, I have to see that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so even the Nobel Prize has its relevance for all of us, also in forestry.
Yeah. Good. Moving on. So earlier this week, I was actually yesterday. But that's also earlier this week. I was listening to a Danish podcast called Den Dyriske Time. I don't know how to pronounce that in English.
The Animal Hour.
Yeah, the Animal Hour. I haven't thought of that anyways. With Alexander Holm. And he had a guy called Thor Jarsen, which is a senior biologist and project manager at Himmelfonden, in for a special. And they were talking about Saksfjed Vildmark or wilderness. And I think we will talk about that in another podcast, because it's actually quite interesting. But they talked about how they sort of measure biodiversity in this project.
Yeah.
And they were talking about a grid of, I think it's 400 by 400 meters with up to, I think it was 24 eDNA sensors. And we talked about sensors last time, and I was like, okay, it caught my attention. And then I was trying to figure out what are these types of sensors, because we have also with our company Forster.com been taking part of university projects or projects that also include universities here in Denmark, where biodiversity is also a pretty important factor in these projects.
Yeah.
And the biologists in these projects talk a lot about eDNA.
Yeah, that's the new thing. There'll probably be a Nobel Prize for that one day.
Yeah. And I think maybe it was like 1.5 years ago we heard about it first time, or maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, I can't remember, something like that.
Yeah, the first meeting we had.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I was not part of the last meeting. You were.
Yeah.
And according to you, it seems like it was top of mind.
Yeah, everyone's talking about it. Yeah. That's the new hammer, I think.
Yeah. So I thought, okay, let's give it a go.
Yeah.
See what it is.
Yeah.
And then I actually found an article on, it's called videnskab.dk, science.dk. I don't know if that's a real domain, but it was just...
It is.
Science.dk.
Oh, sorry, videnskab. Sorry.
Yeah, I know videnskab.dk.
Okay. Sorry.
But don't go to science.dk. I have no idea what's in there. But so the title of this this article, so it actually involves a lot of eDNA and sensors. So that's what we'll talk about. And these sensors that are measured, or these sensors that are mentioned in this article, are also those they were talking about in the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. So the same names were referenced in terms of who's in charge of the group on Copenhagen University.
Yeah.
So the title is, and of course this is translated because the article is Danish. That's incredible. Danish researchers vacuum animal DNA from the air in a Danish forest. That's the title.
Yeah.
It caught my attention.
Yeah. It's maybe to give some context, this videnskab.dk is where you take like research and you try to write it in a populistic way, so it can. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, so other people can benefit from it.
Yeah. So I was so the article that I'm looking at now Well, first of all, it has this title of the article, and it sort of caught my attention. And I was reading along. It says something about how many animals they were or species they were able to detect on a. It was only a 3-day study, so over these 3 days. And I was reading, and at some point in time, I came to this image, and I'll try to explain what it is.
Mm.
So there's 2 guys standing in the forest next to a tree, and then attached to the tree, you have 2 plastic boxes.
Yeah,
you found it.
Yeah, I also have it here.
Yeah, there's 2 plastic boxes attached with a like a belt from Biltema, which is a Swedish company.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of glue and duct tape and 3D printed pieces. And I was like, oh yeah, now we're talking.
The real science experiment.
Exactly. So these two guys are standing next to this tree and looking on some samples, I believe, with face masks on.
Yeah.
I was reading through the article. So. And we'll get more into details. Let's do this right away because there's actually the article. It's sort of I think it's conducted on top of or written on top of a article listed on.
Yeah, it's a scientific article. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's on Wiley.com, and this sort of explains into details. Everything about the study and what's in these boxes.
Yeah, maybe just the idea essentially is that you suck in the air around you, and then you filter. You have some filters that can. Oh, sorry.
I'll get to it.
Okay, sorry.
Because it's like back in the days when we were building computers ourselves.
Yeah,
with fans and all kind of stuff. So let me just read out the abstract. Let me start with the title. So airborne environmental DNA captures terrestrial vertebrate diversity in nature. That's the title of it.
Mm.
So abstract, it's not that long. The current biodiversity and climate crisis highlight the need for efficient tools to monitor terrestrial ecosystems. Here we provide evidence of the use of airborne eDNA analysis as a novel method for detecting terrestrial vertebrate communities in nature. Meta-barcoding of 133 airborne eDNA samples collected during 3 days in a mixed forest in Denmark yield 64 bird, mammal, fish, and amphibian taxae.
Fish?
Yeah. Airborne fish.
Yeah.
Of which the detected 57 wild taxae represents over a quarter of the around 210 terrestrial vertebrates that occur in the overall area. We provide evidence for the spatial movement and temporal patterns of airborne eDNA for the influence of weather conditions on vertebrate detections. This study demonstrates airborne eDNA for high-resolution biomonitoring of vertebrates in terrestrial systems and elucidates its potential to guide global nature management and conservation efforts in the ongoing biodiversity crisis. So it's quite awesome.
Yeah, it is. Honestly, when first reading the article on Videnskab.dk, I had a lot of questions from scientific point of view.
Okay, let me hear.
Well, first of all, when just the numbers of animals they've detected and the diversity of the animals, I would have liked to see a benchmark where they put it just on a football field, not in a forest, but on a football field, just to measure how many. Because it sounds like it's like they almost catch everything. So I was wondering, how do I say that this is good or this is bad or I expected this contra this, and I also read the scientific article, not all of it, but some of it, and I saw a lot of questions for me.
Yeah,
especially when you go to look at how they the wind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the scientific article you have they do it's not that it's not good work at all. I have they have done a lot of work. Let's just say, like also just analyzing the weather conditions and so on. But what I saw is that these maps of how the wind have been these days also stated that they couldn't guarantee that some of the measurements. So the measurements are conducted on Sealand in Denmark.
Yeah.
That they couldn't, they could be from Jutland. Some of those.
Yeah, some of those plots. I mean, the I don't know, the wind trajectories or what do you call it?
Yeah, and it's 48 hours backwards.
Yeah, it's all the way back to UK.
Yeah, exactly. That's also, and then that also again illustrates. I think my question would be, what if I just put them on, like a football field or any field? Would I have gotten the same result?
Yeah.
So, I think that I'm missing that conclusions in this, but it's of course interesting to see that you can measure it through air, because backed on what my questions here, I thought, okay, let's just see what are the different sensors on this eDNA that you can actually sensors for eDNA.
Yeah.
And you can't find a lot, and the ones that I was able to find were mostly for doing it in water.
Mm-hmm.
Guess it's because the flow of water is easier to handle in this.
Yeah, and you don't have the influence of such a large area,
exactly,
because of the airborne.
Yeah, exactly.
I would assume.
Yeah, also me, I'm not a bit. So,
but it is actually. I mean, I was thinking about because not to say anything bad about a Danish company, because I really think they are quite cool as well.
Mm-hmm.
What's the name?
Is it Fauna Photonics?
Yeah, exactly. They have like a pretty awesome sensor also, but it seems like it's large, quite expensive, and it needs to be present for quite a long time.
Yeah, that's also so you can say something about the seasonings and all that.
Yeah.
But then it can also only measure in a very small area.
Yeah.
But I guess let's discuss that, because that can also be positive.
Yeah. So in regards to the concern you just mentioned, that's very positive.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess just to mention on the technology they use, it's not like capturing air and measuring DNA, but it's actually they use the sound.
Yeah.
Or the vibrations in the air that like insects make.
Yeah, they actually analyze the insects in the let's say close area to the sensor.
Yeah, and it also has the limitations that they can't capture all. They can capture like mammals walking on the ground and stuff like that. That's not part of the idea here. Their sensors technology is to measure insects.
But I think looking at these sensors with this eDNA or these eDNA sensors, I mean, it's basically just these two boxes with a filter attached and then two computer fans.
Yeah.
And then there's a high flow and a low flow.
Yeah.
And the low flow is 5 volts and the high flow is 12 volts.
It's also funny like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's so scientific described, and you could just go to your garage and just
we could probably build it.
Exactly.
I guess the filter somewhere has to be a little special to capture the DNA, but
and then I also think there's some airflow sensors in it. I'm not quite sure how sort of.
But you're right.
They're simple.
The simplicity of it, and I guess the cost should be very low.
Yeah, I think the sensor. It almost sounds strange to call it a sensor.
Yeah,
but it's a sensor. The box.
It's a box.
Yeah. It would probably cost. I don't know.
It can only be those. I guess.
The filters. Yeah,
because the rest is like off the shelf stuff.
Yeah, and then of course the handling of the filters with the DNA on. I would assume.
Yeah, that's probably where the costs come in.
Yeah, but there was also, I think we maybe mentioned it last time. There was a lady that posted they were at a biodiversity conference here in Denmark, I can't remember. We talked about it. The cost of two-winged animal in terms of what it costs to actually digest what it is, DNA-wise. It was not that much.
No, I can't remember. They didn't mention a lot of cost either in the meeting I had where the biologists talked a lot about this eDNA. They talked more about how they actually collected the samples and what was the process to then get the results.
Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so when you don't have a sensor, what you do is that you manually collect samples, and a sample could be like a trap, an earth trap where insects fall into. It could be a net where you capture insects or butterflies and everything.
Yeah.
And the idea is that you take this, like say it's a ball where you have captured a lot of insects in, then you put them into a blender, and then you press on, and it makes like a paste of insect. And then you put that paste into a machine that can sequence the DNAs.
Yes.
And then by that you can get a quite precise result on what were the insects that was in that trap.
Yeah.
You can't get anything on how many there were, only that they were there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a trade-off with it. You when talking about biodiversity, you would also like to know how many is there of one type of insect or animal. And again, these traps don't capture.
No, it's completely different
animals.
compared to this.
Yeah. And it's also. It's just there is also still a lot of manual process in collecting these. So, but I don't think that the technology to actually do this was that expensive. They talk a lot about it, like this is the new thing.
Yeah,
this is what we do now.
Yeah. But I really hope this will gain traction because, I mean, being able to investigate and have real proof of, the ecosystems and and again, it's just important.
Yeah, from the start of this podcast where you talked about this nature preservation and also having a market for it, but what does that mean?
Yeah,
how do I know if I've done something that's good? And to understand if we do something that's good for anything, we need to measure, and we need to understand what it is that we measure and what that gives us.
Yeah, and it should be as real time as possible.
Yeah, and if I am to pull this information or this knowledge into our realm of Forsler and our customers who are typically forest owners and forest managers, is if we need to give them an idea of what is the best thing to do if you want to create a better environment for biodiversity and so on. So it's really interesting for us to understand how should a forest or a nature area look like to maximize biodiversity. So we follow this very interestedly because we want to be able to communicate that to everyone, and I guess that probably will come with all these certification that biodiversity is also a big thing of them.
Yeah,
it seems to have it's a major concern, rightfully probably, as we also talked about in the start. We don't completely know what that means, but it's interesting to follow, and I also guess it's a really hard problem to actually measure DNA. I can imagine that. So
yeah. So if anyone listening to this and maybe could add in or chip in with some insights, and
exactly,
that would be nice. And of course also looking at what we sort of supply our customers with, a management platform. It would be nice if some of these, in some way, these insights could be transferred into, let's say, things that you can act on. I mean, take into account when you make plans for the forest, or that would be awesome.
Yeah, and that could be everything from we should plant these combination of trees because that we know that will give us this, or and I know that there are studies on that, but I have also seen a lot of studies pointing in every direction, which studies also should until we understand it completely. But I don't know if you can remember that we were at this forest association meeting at down in Roll, where this study from Germany in commercial forestry, also investigating biodiversity in commercial forestry in Germany, and the conclusion of that study was that there was no difference between. And I don't know what, because the other studies I was presented at this meeting in our consortium, this research project, said that there was a difference. So,
it's not easy.
No, and one of the keys to make it easier is to be able to measure.
Yeah, exactly.
Fast and efficiently.
That was eDNA, and these high-tech eDNA sensors.
Yeah, very high-tech.
Yeah. So in this study, they had 6 and 24 in the other study. And I know we have a meeting coming up with Thor, actually, this week. I'll ask him.
Yeah, it's interesting to get a biologist take on also that. Now we said and sit and say, what if I just put them in a field? Maybe he can give some insights into, okay, you could do that, but then it doesn't really make sense or anything. So yeah, looking forward to that. You should do a special with Thor. We should do a special with Thor.
Yeah, I'll try to convince him. Okay, I think I don't know. I don't have any more. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, let's do that. And I
see you in the next one.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.